Your mind is your battlefield. Win it with these Stoic tools. What if the real battlefield was never outside your life, but inside your mind? What if every moment of hesitation, every emotional collapse, every silent resentment was not a reaction to the world, but evidence of a war you never trained for? You walk through your days believing you're choosing your actions, but most of your actions are nothing more than impulses disguised as decisions. Marcus Aurelius warned that the mind becomes weak when it forgets its own power. Jung showed that the enemy you refuse to face grows stronger in the shadows. Frankl proved that even in chaos, the mind can choose meaning. Yet you keep living as if your thoughts are facts and your emotions are commands. Your mind is a battlefield because life constantly pressures you, challenges you, exposes you. The battle is the tension between who you are and who you could be, between the instinct that pulls you down and the discipline that could pull you forward, between the stories you inherited and the truth you avoid. The conflict is internal, but the consequences spill into everything you touch. This video is not about calming your mind. It is about taking control of it. Pain becomes structure when you stop treating it as injustice. Fear becomes information when you stop surrendering to it. Emotion becomes a tool when you stop allowing it to be your ruler. Schopenhauer said that most suffering is self-created, and he was right. The undisciplined mind attacks itself. The disciplined mind directs itself. Your thoughts are not neutral. They are shaping your character every hour. Some of them strengthen you. Most of them sabotage you. The question is not whether your mind is fighting. The question is whether you are fighting back. You do not train clarity by wishing for calm. You train clarity by confronting the chaos inside you with awareness, discipline, and action. That is the Stoic protocol. That is the path of a mind that refuses to be defeated. If you keep losing control, it is not because life is unfair. It is because your inner battlefield is unguarded. This is the moment you stop being a spectator in your own mind. This is the moment you learn the tools to win. You keep telling yourself you're fine, that you're stressed but functioning, tired but still in control. Yet every quiet moment exposes the truth you avoid. Your mind is not calm, it is chaotic. And chaos ignored becomes chaos empowered. You pretend there is no war because acknowledging it would force you to confront what you have become. Epictetus warned that no man is free if he is a slave to what he refuses to examine. Jung said the unconscious will direct your life and you will call it fate. Viktor Frankl showed that meaning is forged under pressure, not comfort. Still, you move through your days as if emotional turbulence is normal, as if mental instability is simply your personality, as if losing control is something you can tolerate indefinitely. The war exists in the gap between your intentions and your actions. You intend discipline but choose distraction. You intend clarity but feed confusion. You intend strength but surrender to impulse. This is not failure by accident. It is failure by neglect. When Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, he meant that every unchallenged thought stains you. Every avoided fear shapes you. Every untrained emotion weakens you. The battle is not dramatic, it is subtle. It takes place in micro moments you barely notice. The moment you reach for comfort instead of responsibility. The moment you react instead of respond. The moment you choose escape instead of courage. You lose this war not because you are incapable, but because you are inattentive. You do not guard the gates of your mind. You let anything enter, opinions, fears, expectations, narratives that were never yours. Kierkegaard believed despair was the sickness of not becoming yourself. That is exactly what happens when you refuse to face the internal conflict. You drift into a version of you that is smaller, weaker, reactive, shaped by forces you never questioned. But the worst part is the illusion of normalcy. You convince yourself that this internal battleground is just life, that everyone feels swallowed by their emotions, that everyone lives from impulse to impulse, that everyone drowns in the noise of their own mind. That illusion protects you from discomfort, but it also protects the enemy. The longer you deny the war, the more power it gains. The first Stoic tool is acknowledgement. Not emotional confession, but disciplined recognition. You cannot defeat what you refuse to see, and deep down you know this. You feel the pull to change. You feel the exhaustion of carrying a mind that attacks you. You feel the cost of pretending. The war is already happening. The only question left is whether you will start fighting it. Impulse is the enemy that strikes first. It doesn't wait for logic, values, or discipline. It acts before you do, dragging you into decisions that feel natural but sabotage everything you claim to want. Schopenhauer said that a man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Your impulses reveal that truth. They expose how untrained your inner life is. When Seneca warned that uncontrolled emotion turns a person into their own executioner, he was describing the mind driven by impulse. You think you are choosing, but impulse is choosing for you, shaping your reactions, your habits, your identity. Pride is more deceptive. It disguises weakness as strength. It tells you that you already know enough, that you've already grown enough, that you don't need correction or discipline. Nietzsche believed pride was a cage disguised as armor. Jung saw it as the mask that hides the parts of yourself you refuse to confront. Pride prevents you from learning, from admitting you're wrong, from rebuilding your inner architecture. It convinces you that pain is beneath you, when in truth it is the only force capable of transforming you. Pride protects your ego but destroys your potential. Fear is the most powerful enemy because it attacks from within your imagination. It doesn't need evidence. It only needs your attention. Epictetus taught that people are not disturbed by events, but by the judgments they make about them. Fear thrives exactly there. It reshapes perception, narrowing your vision until you believe danger exists where only challenge exists. Fear turns discomfort into catastrophe and opportunity into threat. It keeps you small, reactive, hesitant. It convinces you that safety is found in avoidance, when avoidance is the very thing that multiplies fear. These three enemies do not operate separately. They reinforce each other. Impulse acts without thinking. Pride refuses correction. Fear exaggerates the consequences. Together, they create a version of you that is fragmented, inconsistent, emotionally unstable. A person pulled in three directions at once cannot stand. That is why Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind that is scattered cannot be at peace. Your mind becomes a battlefield because these enemies fight to control the narrative inside you. But here is the truth you avoid. These enemies are not external forces. You created them. You strengthened them through habit, surrender, and repetition. The undisciplined mind trains its own destroyers. The disciplined mind trains its defenders. The purpose of Stoic training is not to suppress these enemies, but to expose them, observe them, and ultimately transform them. You don't win by eliminating fear, impulse, or pride. You win by reclaiming authority over them. And that authority begins when you acknowledge that these enemies are beating you. Not because they are powerful, but because you are passive. The battle becomes winnable the moment you decide to stop being outnumbered by your own mind. You keep wondering why you lose control, why your emotions outrun your logic, why your discipline collapses at the exact moment you need it most. The answer is simple and uncomfortable. You built the weakness that defeats you, not consciously, not maliciously, but through repetition, avoidance, and self-deception. Marcus Aurelius warned that the mind becomes what it continually does. If you continually choose comfort, you become fragile. If you continually avoid discomfort, you become afraid. If you continually serve your impulses, you become their servant. Weakness is not a curse placed upon you. It is a structure you assembled brick by brick. Every time you escape instead of confront, you reinforce the belief that you cannot handle pressure. Every time you allow emotion to dictate action, you train your nervous system to obey chaos. Every time you postpone responsibility, you tell yourself that your future can absorb the consequences of your present. This is how a battlefield becomes unguarded. This is how a mind becomes undisciplined. The enemy enters because the door is open, not because the enemy is strong. Schopenhauer argued that suffering expands to fill the space you leave empty. If you do not fill your mind with purpose, discipline, and clarity, something else fills it for you. Noise, anxiety, confusion. The mental clutter you tolerate becomes the identity you carry. Kierkegaard called this the despair of becoming less than yourself. You may not call it despair, but you feel it. The heaviness, the self-betrayal, the sense that you are living below your potential because you are ruled by patterns you refuse to break. Fear grows because you feed it. Impulse grows because you obey it. Pride grows because you protect it. These habits become architecture. You are not losing because life is harder for you than for others. You are losing because you built a mind that collapses under weight. You built a system that malfunctions under pressure. You built an inner world that cannot support the life you claim to want. Frankl believed that meaning is discovered in responsibility. That is where strength begins, not in motivation, not in hope, in responsibility. When you accept that your inner weakness is your creation, you finally gain the power to unmake it. When you acknowledge that your emotional instability is trained, not inherent, you can retrain it. When you admit that you are losing because you do not prepare, you can become the kind of person who prepares. The battlefield shifts the moment you stop blaming circumstance and start restructuring yourself. The weakness you built can be dismantled, but only by the version of you strong enough to take ownership of it. Everything begins with perception, not the world, not circumstances, not emotion, perception. The raw interpretation you impose onto reality before you even realize you are doing it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind can turn any obstacle into fuel, but only if it sees clearly. Most people never do. They mistake their interpretations for truth. They confuse their assumptions with fact. They project fear into neutral moments and call it intuition. They confuse pride for principle. They let noise distort judgment until every decision becomes reactive instead of deliberate. Perception undisciplined becomes distortion. Distortion becomes suffering. Suffering becomes identity. This is the chain you have been living in without noticing. Viktor Frankl revealed that even in the darkest conditions, perception determines inner freedom. Jung warned that your unexamined perceptions become the lens through which you misread everything, including yourself. Montaigne believed that a man is tormented more by the image of events than by the events themselves. They were all pointing to the same truth. Your mind does not suffer from reality. It suffers from the meaning you attach to it. When your perception is clouded, emotion takes command. Fear magnifies small problems into existential threats. Insecurity turns challenges into personal attacks. Pride twists correction into humiliation. You respond not to the world, but to a distorted version of it created by your untrained mind. This is why you lose battles before they begin. You are fighting shadows, not truths. You are reacting to stories you unconsciously created. Mastering perception is not about optimism or positive thinking. It is about removing distortion and confronting reality without filters. Epictetus taught that control begins with distinguishing what is yours from what is not. Perception is where this distinction becomes visible. You cannot control the world, but you can control the frame through which you see it. You cannot control outcomes, but you can control the meaning you assign to them. You cannot control other people, but you can control the thoughts you allow to shape your reactions. When you discipline perception, the battlefield changes. Pressure becomes information, pain becomes feedback, criticism becomes data, chaos becomes instruction. Nothing external dictates your inner state. because you have reclaimed the authority to interpret, to evaluate, to choose the frame before emotion floods the system. This is the foundation of the Stoic mind, not indifference, not coldness, control. The mind that sees clearly is not easily broken. The mind that interprets wisely is not easily manipulated. The mind that chooses its frame is the mind that wins. Your first weapon is not strength, it is clarity. Without it, every battle becomes a defeat. With it, every challenge becomes fuel. Emotions are not the enemy. Your lack of discipline is. People fear their emotions because they never learned to train them. They let feelings surge, dominate, and decide their next move. They confuse intensity with truth and reaction with identity. Epictetus warned that the real chains are not forged by the world, but by the passions we refuse to master. Musonius Rufus taught that self-control is the highest form of strength. Modern psychology agrees. An unregulated emotion becomes a weapon pointed inward. A trained emotion becomes a tool of clarity and action. You lose control because you expect emotions to behave rationally. They do not. They rise with memory, instinct, trauma, habit. They are fast, powerful, and ancient. They were designed for survival, not wisdom. When fear spikes, your body reacts before your mind interprets. When anger flares, your vision narrows and your judgment collapses. When insecurity awakens, your thoughts become a maze of distorted assumptions. None of this means the emotion is wrong. It means it is untrained. The flame is not dangerous. The lack of containment is. Emotional discipline is not suppression. Suppression breeds resentment. Suppression strengthens the very emotion you fear. Emotional discipline is observation with authority. It is the ability to feel without obeying, to sense the surge but refuse the collapse, to allow emotion to exist while refusing to let it dictate your behavior. Jung stated that no emotion becomes integrated until it is faced directly. Frankl insisted that action aligned with values must override emotional instability. Seneca demanded that emotion be guided, not indulged. You gain emotional power the moment you create separation, the moment you say, "This is fear rising, but it is not me." The moment you say, "This is anger speaking, but it does not choose my next move." The moment you say, "This is pain, but pain does not decide my character." Emotional discipline turns reaction into response, chaos into clarity, intensity into fuel. It transforms the mind from a battlefield into a command center. The key is repetition. Every time you hold the line for 1 second longer, you train your emotional system. Every time you pause before reacting, you reclaim ground from the enemy. Every time you choose action aligned with principle instead of impulse, you strengthen the inner structure that keeps you unbroken under pressure. This is Stoic emotional training. You do not eliminate emotion. You elevate it, you give it direction. You become its master instead of its servant. A person ruled by emotion is unpredictable. A person who commands emotion is unstoppable. When your emotions obey your values, you become immune to manipulation, resistant to chaos, and anchored in purpose. Emotional discipline is the second weapon because without it, even the clearest perception collapses under pressure. With it, you become the kind of person who can walk through storms without losing inner stability. Clarity means nothing without action. Discipline means nothing without action. Emotional control means nothing without action. A mind that sees but does not move becomes a spectator of its own potential. This is where most people fail. They wait for certainty. They wait for motivation. They wait for fear to disappear. In doing so, they train themselves to hesitate. Kierkegaard warned that anxiety grows in the space where action should have been. Nietzsche insisted that will is revealed only through movement. Fromm taught that a human being becomes real through committed action. Without action, everything collapses back into theory. The undisciplined mind treats action as a choice. The Stoic mind treats action as duty, not duty imposed by others, duty imposed by values. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the purpose of a human being is to do the work of a human being, work that aligns with courage, integrity, discipline, responsibility. When you act according to principle, you gain strength even if the outcome is uncertain. When you avoid action because of discomfort, you weaken even if nothing goes wrong. Action defines you. Inaction dissolves you. Relentless action is not recklessness. It is consistency under pressure. It is the refusal to negotiate with excuses. It is the decision to move forward despite fear, despite doubt, despite emotional turmoil. Fear becomes smaller when you walk toward it. Doubt fades when you act in spite of it. Emotional instability loses power the moment you act according to values instead of impulses. Jung believed that every action taken in alignment with your deeper self produces integration. Every action avoided divides you further. You become strong not by thinking about strength, but by acting with strength. You become disciplined, not by admiring discipline, but by practicing it when you least want to. You gain control, not by wishing for it, but by choosing behaviors that reinforce it. This is the Stoic paradox. Action creates the internal state people believe they must wait for. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act while fear is present. Purpose is not something you find. It is something you build through repeated action, aligned with who you choose to be. The battlefield of the mind is not won by thoughts. It is won by behaviors. Every action is a claim over territory. Every time you choose values over impulse, you reclaim ground from the enemy. Every time you take responsibility, instead of hiding behind excuses, you strengthen the internal structure that keeps you unbroken. Every time you act with clarity instead of hesitation, you train your mind to obey discipline rather than chaos. Relentless, values-driven action is the third Stoic weapon because it makes the other two permanent. Perception guides your direction. Emotion obeys your discipline. Action proves who you are. You do not become unbreakable by thinking. You become unbreakable by doing. Strength is not a single trait. It is the integration of three internal forces working in alignment. When perception is clear, emotion is disciplined, and action is relentless, the mind becomes something most people never experience. It becomes unified. A unified mind does not collapse under pressure because its components support one another. Frankl believed that meaning emerges when thought, feeling, and action align toward a purpose larger than comfort. Marcus Aurelius believed that harmony within the mind creates harmony with fate. Jung saw integration as the birth of a whole human being. This is what every Stoic was trying to build. A mind that cannot be broken because its foundation is not divided. Most people experience the opposite. Their perception says one thing, their emotions demand another. Their actions contradict both. They are pulled in three directions at once. They want clarity but feed confusion. They want discipline but indulge impulse. They want progress but avoid discomfort. Their inner conflict becomes the reason they cannot endure external conflict. A house divided collapses under its own weight. A mind divided does the same. When perception is trained, emotion loses the power to distort reality. When emotion is disciplined, it stops hijacking behavior. When action is values-driven, it reinforces the identity you are trying to build. Each supports the next. Clarity fuels emotional stability. Emotional stability fuels decisive action. Decisive action fuels deeper clarity. This loop becomes your internal engine. The battlefield is no longer a place of chaos. It becomes a place of strategy. This integration does not erase difficulty. It transforms your relationship to it. Pain still arrives, but it no longer defines you. Fear still whispers, but it no longer commands you. Doubt still visits, but it no longer determines your path. Nietzsche believed that the person who has a why can endure almost any how. The integrated mind always has a why. That why becomes the compass when emotion becomes turbulent, and the anchor when chaos presses in. To integrate these three forces, you must practice them deliberately. You train perception by questioning your interpretations before believing them. You train emotion by feeling without obeying. You train action by doing what aligns with your values, even when comfort tempts you to retreat. Over time, these practices stop being practices. They become identity. You no longer perform discipline. You are disciplined. You no longer manage emotion. Emotion respects your authority. You no longer force action. Action becomes your natural state. An unbreakable mind is not rigid. It is aligned. Rigidity snaps under pressure. Alignment absorbs pressure and redirects it. This is the architecture of a Stoic iron mind. A mind that sees with clarity, feels with discipline, and moves with purpose. A mind that no longer fears the battlefield because it has become the one who commands it. The goal was never to escape the battlefield. The goal was to become the kind of person who can stand in the center of it without breaking. Life does not pause for your healing. Chaos does not wait for your clarity. The world does not lower its weight because you feel unprepared. Marcus Aurelius knew this when he wrote that the impediment becomes the way. The obstacle does not move. You move. You adapt. You evolve into someone capable of carrying what once crushed you. That is the transformation you have been avoiding, and the transformation this battlefield demands. You kept losing because you fought with a divided mind. You saw through distortion, felt without discipline, acted without values. Now the architecture is different. Your perception is trained. Your emotions recognize authority. Your actions reflect intention instead of impulse. This is what Frankl meant when he spoke about the last human freedom, the freedom to choose your response. Not once, not occasionally, always, even under pressure, even when fear is loud, even when chaos surrounds you. A disciplined mind becomes its own refuge. You will not win every day. No Stoic ever did. But you will not collapse the way you once did. You will not surrender to the first wave of fear. You will not crumble under discomfort. You will not abandon your values because emotion becomes inconvenient. Nietzsche believed that strength is the capacity to bear what others cannot. True strength is not domination. It is endurance with purpose. It is the willingness to stand firm even when standing hurts. It is the refusal to betray yourself when pressure rises. Fromm argued that freedom requires responsibility. The unbreakable mind accepts this. It stops blaming circumstance. It stops bargaining with excuses. It stops waiting for motivation, certainty, or ideal conditions. A warrior of the mind does not negotiate with discomfort. A warrior acts. A warrior endures. A warrior reflects and recalibrates without self-pity. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. This is the Stoic way. You are not finished. You are prepared. The war inside you will continue. Doubt will return. Fear will rise. Impulse will attempt a comeback. But now you have weapons. Perception that cuts through distortion. Emotional discipline that refuses collapse. Action that reinforces the identity you are building. The mind you carry today is not the mind that kept losing. It is a mind fortified by confrontation, sharpened by effort, and guided by values you finally chose instead of inherited. The battlefield is the same. You are not. And that difference is what makes you unstoppable. Stoic iron mind, cold philosophy, unbreakable mind.